Thanks for waking up with us.
How you doing, everybody? Welcome back to Staying Focused for Jesus. Hope each and every one of you are having a blessed day in the Lord Jesus Christ as always. Today is Saturday, June 18th, 2022. Saturday, June 18th, 2022. The time is approximately 5:24 p.m. It is a blessed day to be alive, a blessed day to be alive, a blessed day to be alive. I want to make sure I say it 3 times. Because some of you didn't get it the first and second time. Some of you didn't get it the first and second time. It is a blessed day to be alive. Contrary to what your flesh is telling you. Contrary to what your situation, your circumstances, your trials and tribulations, and all these different stresses and pains and different things that we deal with, contrary to what these different things with your friend, with your family, with your people, with your job, we're going to live with your doctor, your lawyer, whatever they're telling you, contrary to what they're telling you, it is a blessed day to be alive. It is also a blessed time to be alive, especially for us who are believers. That's not the topic of today's sermon, but you speak as the Spirit leads you. What I do want to talk about is hypocrisy. Hypocrisy. Let me ask you this question. Why are so many people, or I should say, why do you think so many people are offended by Black Jesus? Now, you can pause it if you're listening to the video with other people. You can pause it. Y'all can have a conversation. That's the beauty of today's technology. I can make a 4-hour video and you can pause it. I can make an hour video. You can pause it. I can make a 30-minute video. You can pause it. I can make a 1-minute video and you can pause it. Why do you think so many people are offended by Black Jesus? Why? Most of us who are what we call Black, what did we grow up thinking that Jesus was? Go ahead and say it. We grew up thinking that Jesus was white. And most of us didn't have a problem with Jesus being white. But now that the truth is getting out there more and more and more, and abundantly more, it's an issue. It's an issue because we say, hey, this is not, this is not Jesus. Even though we're not supposed to be using any images of the sort like that to be used for worship and stuff like that. They don't question the images of Christ on candles when you go into the Dollar Tree. Well, it's not really a Dollar Tree no more, but it's not the $1.25 tree, but you get what I'm saying. They don't really question it. They don't question the Christmas cards and the holiday cards. They don't question the air fresheners and stuff like that. But because we are making such a big quote unquote stink about it now, it's an issue. Oh, you're causing division and this and that, and you're not a Christian anymore. Like, you just lost your salvation because you came into the knowledge that Jesus is a Black man in his flesh, what we call a Black man. Even though this has been known, it's been known for the longest, but they don't question the people that changed it. Oh no, they question us. No, you prove it. Where's the evidence? Then you give them evidence, they want more and more evidence. You can give them enough evidence that will last them a lifetime, they still won't believe. They still won't believe. So we're not really here for them. We present what we present, and it is what it is. But they don't make these arguments with others like they do with us. And people think that's a problem. I don't necessarily see it as a problem. I see it as a blessing. I see it as power. I see it as a power. You saying little old me can make such a big stink? I'm saying that Jesus is black and presenting the evidence, and people get so bent out of shape. I wonder why. Because that's what truth does. And the word says, sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is true. So a person cannot sit here and claim to be a Christian and say it doesn't matter. If it's truth, it's true. Sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is true. The issue is that people have been worshiping a false image, a false representation of Christ. Whether Christ was white or not, that's still a false representation of Christ. Christ wasn't walking around looking like no sissy. You see what I'm saying? This is deeper than Jesus being a black man in his flesh. Let's say that Jesus was and is white. That is still a false representation, a false image of Christ, because he was not walking around looking like that. He didn't look soft. He looked rough from the streets. Them country boys you run into or whatnot. If Jesus was white, he was one of them country boys, one of them rednecks. Let's just be real about it. I sold something the other day. Dude came from Little Rock, which is about an hour away. Came out with a tank top on. He had his truck. It was country. Hey, how you doing there? Now you know what's on the right house. Rough. He's coming to buy an old generator that I had. Yeah, times is hard. I ain't got no need for it right now. We sold that thing. Times is hard, ain't it? Yeah. He was old roughneck. We call him redneck. You can tell you country. You can tell you, yeah, man, you run this whole thing with you. Now I got an 8,000 watt generator. I run the whole house with that. They want to wire it up, but you got to pay for that. So I just run it with an extension cord. All right, come on now. That's how Jesus would have came if he was so-called white. We talking about scholarly research though. If a person that's black, rather it's myself, rather it's one of the camps who I'm not associated with, if any of us bring up Jesus being black, it's an issue, it's a problem. Even though it's talked about regularly in a scholarly circle. And in fact, you have this woman, Genevieve, beautiful name, Genevieve Carlton. I love that name, Genevieve, if I pronounced it right. It says she is a freelance writer with a PhD in history from Northwestern University and an award-winning portfolio. So she she got those credentials if you care about all that stuff. But that's not really the point about her credentials. The credentials I want you to see is what? She's a white woman. She's a white woman, what we call a white woman. You wouldn't say that she's mixed. You wouldn't say this. You wouldn't say that. You would say that she's what? She's a white woman, right? Okay, we got that. Let's go to our next point. Because this is who? This is Genevieve Carlton. Genevieve Carlton. I love that name. All right. This is an article written by Genevieve Carlton, a white woman. What's the title of the article? What did Jesus look like? Here's what the evidence says. I want y'all to make sure y'all go blow her up the way y'all blow us black people up, speaking about Jesus being a black man. I want y'all to go blow her up and go blow up all the scholars. They're going to cite and tell you that they're doing this research, trying to figure out what color was Jesus, even though they already know, but they gotta play the game. I want y'all to go blow up all of them. Go blow up their emails, go blow up the schools they work for, the magazines they publish. Go blow them all up and say, this is atrocity. This is, abomination, because that's how y'all act. Y'all act like it's an abomination for Jesus to be black. I wonder if that's what y'all really feel and think. I wonder if that's what you really feel. That's what you really think in your heart. Jesus can't be black. You know why Jesus can't be black? Because how many of you that are white have treated black people today. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Most of my own people that are what we call black, I don't even fool with them myself. I don't even fool with them myself. But I still do judge righteously. Would you like me to write off all white people simply because I've had bad experience after bad experience after bad experience after bad experience with white people? Should I write all of them off? Of course you wouldn't want me to do that. You want me to give you a fair chance. You want me to judge you according to who you are. Rather, that person that you're presenting to me is fake or real. You want me to give you a fair chance. And yet we don't deserve the same. Of course we don't, because history has shown that people both black and white, and I'm being generic, don't believe that black people as a whole deserve a fair chance. Even black people have taken on that mindset and the mentality. We know that's the way of America. But this is the article that she wrote that I came across recently. You can go look it up and type it in if you want to confirm it actually from her. I'm not going to do all of that right now. For whatever reason, when I put it in this program, it took all that off. But you know how we're going to do. We're going to listen to it. I'm going to commentate, and we're going to get some scriptures, and we're going to see some very interesting things. Now, let me mention this, because you know how they do. They write these articles, and they're real slick. They're real slick when they write the article. They'll say something, and then you're like, okay, yeah. And then later on, they'll say pretty much the opposite of what they said earlier, or they'll go into a little bit more details. Let's go ahead and get it.
What did Jesus look like? Here's what the evidence says. What did Jesus look like? Here's what the historical evidence actually says. Though Jesus is often portrayed as a light-skinned man with long hair and a beard, the real face of the Son of God was probably very different. The Bible says very little about Jesus Christ's physical traits. And for centuries after his death, likely due to concerns about idolatry, artists did not create depictions of the Son of God. So what did Jesus look like? The
Bible says very little about Jesus Christ's physical traits. It says enough. It's there, just people don't want to see it. And I'm not just talking about Revelation 1. It's crazy and interesting because they mention, I think it's in this article, another article, which they kind of like tie together that we're going to look at. They mention Revelation 1, verse 14, and they mention scholars using that verse. I'm not a scholar. I'm a Bible believer, filled with the Holy Spirit that guides me and leads me in all truth. Now, you want to call me a scholar in that sense? I'm a spiritual scholar. That's what my scholarship is in. That's what my learning is in. My learning is in the Spirit of God through the gospel of God. Don't try to steal it, but y'all can borrow it.
If we believe famous Renaissance artists, then the Christian Messiah had flowing hair and a long beard. He also had pale skin, as seen in Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper or Michelangelo's The Last Judgment.
And we know that Leonardo da Vinci, he was what? He was a sodomite. And they changed his image into what we see today, depicting themselves. If I'm not mistaken, it was actually a picture of his lover.
But these iconic artistic depictions of Jesus look nothing like a typical first-century Jewish man in the Roman province of Judea. While we have no solid evidence of what the real face of Jesus looked like, he probably did not resemble the paintings hanging in most Western churches today.
Spaghetti-o. But these iconic artistic depictions of Jesus look nothing like a typical first-century Jewish man in the Roman province of Judea. So they got something to compare to. They have something that they could compare and say, okay, this is what the typical first century Jewish people in this area look like. And this is what Jesus is being presented as today. They say, look, nothing. So the pictures of today that we see of Jesus, or their Jesus, but for argument's sake, of Jesus, look nothing like a typical first century Jewish man in the Roman province of Judea. Pretty much what they're saying is it's the complete opposite. They didn't say it was similar. She didn't say it was similar. She said today's iconic artistic depictions look nothing like what the actual people of that time period looked like. So therefore, if we know the iconic artistic depictions of Christ are, what we call white, then they look nothing like the actual people, then what does that tell you? But if we say this and we bring forth this evidence, it is a problem. So I guess it's a problem for Genevieve, because she's doing her job for whatever reason she wrote this article. I think it was written March 8th, 2022. And yet people will say that we're causing division, we're out of pocket, all these different things. We're talking about what's in the Bible. The Bible gives the physical description of Jesus, and even history gives a physical description of Jesus. I'm doing my job, and you just don't like myself or others doing our job, which is bringing forth the truth. He probably did not resemble the paintings hanging on most Western churches today. So how Jesus came to be depicted as a white man. Let's go down. Let me see. Okay. Let me go down. We can skip all that. Let's go right here.
Generations of Western artists have portrayed Jesus as a pale-skinned man with long, brown hair and a beard. Some, like Warner Salmon in his painting Head of Christ, have even depicted Jesus as a blonde man with blue eyes. But the Son of God wasn't always illustrated in this manner.
And remember, we went over Warner Salmon before. I did a whole, maybe like 2 videos on it or whatnot, where I broke that down, how we got the modern image of Christ today.
The portrayal of Jesus has changed quite a bit throughout the centuries. The artists of the earliest paintings of Christ were not concerned about historical accuracy, but rather symbolism. They wanted to depict his role as a savior, and they simply modeled him after the typical styles of the time. One example of this is Jesus' facial hair. Before the 4th century, images showed a clean-shaven Jesus. Then, around the year 400, artistic depictions of Jesus started including a beard. Was the historical Jesus a bearded or beardless man? The oldest image of Christ does not shed much light.
You just need some common sense. Now, this image of Christ is supposed to be one of the younger or whatnot. Do boys come out the womb having beards? Most boys don't. It's not hard to conclude that maybe this is an earlier depiction of Christ without a beard, meaning his earlier years of life when his beard had not come in. But, so let's scroll down here.
Only discovered in the 20th century, the fresco dates back to 235 CE, known as the Healing of the Paralytic. The image shows Jesus with short hair and no beard. But even this early depiction was created about 200 years after his death, which makes it difficult to confirm the accuracy of his appearance.
Which is true.
As seen in paintings dated after the year 400, Christian artists around the world later began depicting Jesus in their own image. In Ethiopia, depictions of Jesus had African features.
And some of this I'm obviously not going to agree with. I'm just going to go into more detail to explain it a little bit better with what I do know. Ethiopians weren't necessarily depicting Jesus to have African features because they were depicting Jesus in their own image. Ethiopians in Ethiopia, one of the earliest Christian nations, were depicting Jesus as having African features because Jesus had and has what we call African features.
In Ethiopia, depictions of Jesus had African features, while Indian Christians drew Jesus with South Asian features. Meanwhile, European artists continued that tradition, imagining Christ as a fair-skinned man with European characteristics. And as European colonialism spread across the globe, the European version of Jesus followed, and emerged in many countries.
And you get the modern Europe. You got ancient Europe, you got modern Europe. We're going to keep it simple. The modern Europe, modern European nations, they led to the depictions of Christ that we have today. Also, one of the reasons that we know that Jesus eventually had a beard is because of what the law says. He fulfilled the law, right? According to the law, Jew, he had to have that beard. You make an argument, for different things, but that's what I believe according to what the word states. In context. Make sure I say that.
And as European colonialism spread across the globe, the European version of Jesus followed, and emerged in many countries. But according to most scientists and anthropologists, this is not what Jesus really looked like. How modern research...
Okay, but according to who? To most scientists and anthropologists, this is not what Jesus really looked like. They know it, but we talk about it, we're the enemy. Simply because we're talking about it. We're causing division. We're confused. You're one of them. So are they one of them? Are they now black? Are they a black Hebrew Israelite? Because they're speaking about it from a scientific standpoint, which the Bible tells you to study science. It tells you to not get involved in science so falsely called, because true science leads you to God even more. True science reveals God even more. And those that study science and study the sciences and different things, you know it. We went over what science means at its base foundation. Are the anthropologists, are they now black Hebrew Israelites? Deaf to the white man, all this other stuff? Are they now in that camp? Because that's where y'all try to put us at. Even though we tell you that most of us aren't associated with the camps.
New developments in forensic anthropology have allowed researchers to form a better idea of what Jesus actually looked like. In 2001, Richard Neve, a British expert in forensic facial reconstruction, used modern science to recreate the face of a first-century Judean man like Jesus. Using an Israeli skull dating back to the 1st century, Neve and his team used computer programs, clay, and their knowledge of historical Jewish and Middle Eastern features to create a face that might have hypothetically belonged to a neighbor of Jesus, or perhaps even Jesus himself. Neve's work appeared on the BBC documentary series Son of God, which chronicles the life of Jesus using scientific and historical evidence. Jean-Claude Braggard, the producer of the series, said of the recreation, "Using archaeological and anatomical science rather than artistic interpretation makes this the most accurate likeness ever created."
False. Of course he's going to say that because, he got to promote himself, promote the program. This makes it the most accurate likeness ever created. Man, stop it. Stop it. Because the representation they gave is still off.
He continued, "It isn't the face of Jesus, because we're not working with the skull of Jesus, but it is the departure point for considering what Jesus would have looked like." BBC Richard Neve's forensic reconstruction of the face of a first-century man from Judea.
Now, y'all know this image. You've seen this image before. Now, I ain't saying that a Judean man couldn't look like this because he could have. But did majority of the Judean people look like this? You could take skulls from America right now. Depending on where you get them from, it's gonna be dependent on how those skulls come out. Just because a person lives in Judea doesn't mean that they are what we call black, during that time period. Now I understand, things were a little bit different because they were more, clustered together and stuff like that. I understand that. But still, though, there still is a baseline. There still is a baseline. And That's why I warned you. They tell you this, but then they're going to tell you pretty much something else later on in this article, if I'm not mistaken. Could be the other article, but I think it's this one. But either way, we're gonna get to it. Now, I don't believe this. I'm not saying that there couldn't or there wasn't any Judeans that looked like this, but this being the representation of, hey, this is what Christ most likely looked like, you can make the argument. But either way, even if we go with this image right here, does this look like the image that we are portrayed with today? And the reason that they can't, or they don't just come out, most of them don't just come out and say, hey, we know, is they have to finesse it. Because if they just come straight out and say, yeah, we know that Jesus was black and this is what they really look like, not meaning this guy, but the typical black person, stuff like that, then it does a lot. It just does a lot in regards to a person has to accept that a lot of the history was wrong. It opens up more questions about reparations. Are you going to rile the slaves up even more because you're publicly coming out with that? I mean, you think about it. Let's say the president comes out and brings out this enormous evidence. He makes an official statement. All nations make an official statement, but America is at the head of it. Bringing forth the truth and saying, hey, these are the Hebrews and everything, and we know that Jesus is black, and we did all this, right? To me, that's like on a level of coming out and saying that we know that aliens are here. We've been in contact with them. It would be such a bombshell. Now, you can make an argument and say, no, it's not that. It's not on that level, but to me it is, and to me it's actually greater than that because of the everything that comes along with such a revelation as that being brought forth to the world. Okay, let's pick it up right here.
The forensic reconstruction looks nothing like the Jesus depicted in European art. Instead, it shows a man with tan, olive-toned skin. He has dark, curly hair cropped close to his head and a short beard.
Even according to their forensic reconstruction, the Jesus depicted there, or the Judean man depicted there, doesn't look like what's portrayed in in European art. The modern day European depiction of Christ isn't the same as what was portrayed historically. Again, they say it shows a man with tan, olive-toned skin. That's how they try to confuse you. Oh, he wasn't black, he was olive-toned, because most people don't even understand what olive-tone or tan really means.
The forensic reconstruction looks nothing like the Jesus depicted in European art. Instead, it shows a man with tan, olive-toned skin. He has dark, curly hair cropped close to his head and a short beard.
Tan, to convert into leather by steeping it in tannin. We did a sermon on all this stuff before, right? It tells you tan, dye a tawny color. Crushed oak bark. What color trees? The outside of them. It tell you it probably comes from the root word, which is oak tree, TANN, which is interesting because the Bible speaks a lot about oak trees. The meaning make brown by exposure to sun, as tanning does the how it's first recorded in 1520s, right? Okay, let me see. Let's go down. Tan. Spaghetti-o. Bronze what? Bronze color. Didn't this Bible say something about his skin being like burnt bronze? Bronze color imparted to skin by exposure to sun. The deeper wisdom is Christ bronzing, coming into who he always has been through the exposure of the light, the love, the full light and love of his Father. That's the deeper wisdom of it, but that's for another sermon. And it says, as a simple name for a brownish color. So when we're talking about tan, we're talking about brown. Like I told y'all many times before, the reason they cause confusion with black people, they say, oh, it's black, not brown. Black people know that we're not actually black like that. We're brown. We know that. Well, most of us do. Okay, let's jump over here. Let's look at this word tannin. Tannin. And it says vegetable substance capable of converting animal hide to leather. It tells you again to see tan. Okay, so it's telling you the same thing. You see the connection, right? Now we're gonna go over here to let's go tawny first. Tawny, y'all know this. Tawny tells you what? Tan colored of or like the brownish yellow of tanned leather. Dark brown. Dark brown. You know what tan leather look like. We type in tan leather on Google. It's a simple search. We know this, but I just want you to see this. It comes in what? A variety of different colors. Variety of different, shouldn't say color, different shades. We're talking about tan, right? Variety of different shades. We know this. Simple, right? So why do we complicate things? All right, let me close that out. Let's go here. Now you type in olive skin complexion. They try to tell you this. Now, you can make an argument, but most of these women have makeup on. Most of these women have makeup on, right? What's this actress name right here? They're saying that she has olive skin. She has makeup on. Is she considered Mediterranean? Is she considered Middle Eastern, or is she considered a white woman? This is what they try to confuse people at. Even when you look at this right here, and I use this chart, you can see the difference. Now I know there's a whole bunch of them, and a person can take any of this stuff and make an argument, but you should be able to take all this evidence and come to a righteous conclusion. Righteous conclusion. It's interesting they're saying that Jesus was olive, and then on the scale of skin types it says it rarely burns and it always tans. I find it interesting because he bronzed, as in a furnace, as in a fire. Just like, a lot of us, we bronze when we get in that sun, we get darker. And then when we're not in the sun, we get lighter, but we don't get like, white, white light. Right? But it's, interesting that when you look at most of these images, they're not showing like black people in regards to tan skin, olive skin. This one shows tan right here, and that one shows a deep brown. And then I think you go right here. This is an article. It says olive skin and brown skin the same thing. And see, these women are naturally be olive, even when they take the makeup off. They would naturally be, on the more olive side, especially Rihanna. You can make an argument. I think that's Alicia Keys, even when they take the makeup off. Even this woman right here, she looks more, what we call, Indian, more Indian, and she has that deep rich olive skin. I don't know if that's makeup or not, but her skin is beautiful, if that is her real skin. So we're seeing a pattern, and we go over here Let's go to the Fitzpatrick scale. Okay, the Fitzpatrick scale tells us it's a skin typing test, and it is a numerical classification schema for human skin color. It was developed in 1975 by American dermatologist Thomas B. Fitzpatrick as a way to estimate the response of different types of skin to ultraviolet UV light. It was initially developed on the basis of skin color to measure the correct dose of UVA for PUVA therapy, and when the initial testing based only on hair and eye color resulted in too high UVA doses for some, it was altered to be based on the patient's report of how their skin responds to the sun. So we're talking about real science here, right? It was also extended to a wider range of skin types. The Fitzpatrick scale remains a recognized tool for dermatological, if I pronounce that right, research in human skin pigmentation. A lot of the stuff y'all buying in the store for skin types and makeup and stuff like that is based off of this. So don't give me that bull job saying this don't matter when you go into the store. You buying the very products that are used, that are developed using this knowledge right here, and saying it doesn't matter. This is the following list shows the 6 categories of the Fitzpatrick scale in relation to the 36 categories of the older von Lucian scale. So it gives you type 1, type 2, type 3 says sometimes mild burns, tans uniformly, golden honey, or what? Olive. Tans uniformly. Right? Then you got type 4, type 5, and type 6. It's darker and darker. Then we jump over here and we read this. Olive skin is a human skin color spectrum, is often associated with pigmentation in the type 3, 2, type 4, and type 5 range of the Fitzpatrick scale. That's why you have to cross-reference stuff and you look this up and look that up and whatnot, because they'll do something like that. They're telling you all the skin goes all the way up to what they consider type 4 and type 5, which is where most of us would fall into. So you can't say that Jesus couldn't have been olive skin. Olive skin doesn't include us. It generally refers to, right, to light or moderate tan skin according to what they're saying, and is often described as having yellow, green, or golden undertones. People with olive skin can sometimes become paler if their sun exposure is limited. Lighter olive skin still tans more easily than light skin does, and generally still retains notable yellow or greenish undertones. Because that bronzing, when you tan, you can see those undertones even more because of what's in your blood and the absorption of the sun rays and all this other stuff. Now we go down to geographic distribution. It tells you type 3 pigmentation is frequent among populations from the Mediterranean, i.e. Southern Europe, Western Asia, and Northern Africa, as well as some parts of Latin America and Asia. It ranges from cream to darker olive skin tones. This skin type sometimes burns and tans gradually, but always tans. Okay, then it says type 4 pigmentation is frequent among some population from the Mediterranean. So you got in the same area, right? Romani people as well as parts of Asia and Latin America. It ranges from brownish or darker olive to moderate brown, typical Mediterranean skin tones. Mediterranean, you're talking about what? The Middle East, North Africa, that area. But you see, they have this guy. It says a baker with olive skin from Greece, an archetypal olive skin region. They got this guy. It's deeper than that. We jump over here to Wikipedia and we see tannins. And they are a class of, on the chemical level, they are estrogen. They cleanse, right? Just like you have, like we call, witch hazel. You put witch hazel on your face. You have tea tree oil, right? We go down, we already read that. But it says right here, by extension, the term tannin is widely applied to any large polyphenolic compound containing sufficient hydroxyls and other suitable groups such as carboxyls to form strong complexes with various macromolecules. The tannin compounds are widely distributed in many species of plants where they play a role in protection from predation, including as pesticides. In our skin, naturally, because it's a tannin, the tannin, right? It's a natural protection from predation and also pesticides. Right? Although I don't want to go down that I ain't want to go down there, but you can just think about what I just said. Pesticides. Tannin is in our skin. Tannin is in a high concentration. I should say higher concentration of what we call black people, brown people. And one of the things that it does is it protects against pesticides. Think about the food. Do we even have to go there? Now, what's interesting is this. We see the connection with tannin and oak trees. We go to the scriptures, as we always do, and it says, Jesus heals a blind man at Bethsaida. And he cometh to Bethsaida, and they bring a blind man unto him, and besought him to touch him. And he took the blind man by the hand, and led him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes, and put his hands upon him, he asked him if he saw aught. So Christ asked him, hey, can you see? And he looked up, the blind man that is, who was no longer blind, and said, I see men as trees walking. One of my favorite scriptures, because it's just out there and people don't really realize the deeper understanding of this scripture, tying all the way back to the Garden of Eden and even before that. After that he put his hands again upon his eyes and made him look up, and was restored and saw every man clearly. So he saw the men clearly as they were in the flesh. But there's something very, very spiritual going on. So the word tells us if we would judge things according to the spiritual and see the spiritual, then we would really see what's going on. But we go back to verse 24, and he looked up and said, I see men as trees walking. We find something very, very interesting. We go to this word, and then it tells you a tree. It says an oak tree. You also see the word Drus, Drus, which is which ends up being the modern word of what? Druid. And you know about the Druid, you know their connection with the oak tree. So I found that very, very interesting that when you go look this word up, it specifically is referencing the oak tree. And we know that the oak tree is referenced and symbolized in so many different ways you can put it in the Bible. And get here is specifically talking about an oak tree that is known and was used back then and even now for its tannin. It's tannin. Now going back to our Wikipedia article, the tannin compounds are widely distributed in many species of plants where they play a role in protection from predation, including as pesticides. God put natural pesticides in plants and trees. And yet, because man screws stuff up, and may have something against tannin, we're going to put it like that. They say, oh no, we're going to use our own pesticides. They're going to pretty much destroy the crops even more and strip them of their nutrients and all these other things. It also says, and might help in regulating plant growth. So this tannin helps regulate plant growth. And we put that in the context of us as mankind. It helps us to grow, which is interesting because that's something that melanin that's something that melanin does. Melanin, which is directly tied to tannin, helps to regulate our growth through what we know as what? As hormones. I guarantee you take hydroxyls and carboxyls and research it, and you can see the correlation and connection with also melanin having hydroxyls and carbons on a very, very deep level. I guarantee there's a direct connection. The astringency from tannins is what causes the dry and puckery feeling in the mouth following the consumption of unripe fruit, red wine, or tea. The teas that you drink, it is the tannin that really gives us its color. Likewise, the destruction or modification of tannins with time plays an important role when determining harvesting times. That's very, very interesting. At least I found it interesting in correlation with the scriptures. How does God know it's harvest time? Because of the destruction of his people, the state of his people, and the rise of those who don't have as many tannins. Are we not seeing the connections? Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Oh, we jump down here and it says tannins are distributed in species throughout the plant kingdom. They are commonly found in both gymnosperms and angiosperms. Don't worry about the first part. Worry about the latter part. The what? The sperms. Do you see the connection?
While most men in the 1st century Levant shaved their faces, it is possible that Jesus may have worn a beard.
He did.
After all, he spent much of his time as a wandering preacher, which probably left him little time to groom.
That had nothing to do with nothing. There's some underlying stuff they're saying there. We know how the Hebrews were in regards to, cleanliness and stuff like that. Jesus wasn't walking around being stank all day. He got stank naturally from the work that he did as a carpenter in the sun. That doesn't mean that he didn't take care of himself because he was a wandering preacher. That's foolish.
After all, he spent much of his time as a wandering preacher, which probably left him little time to groom. Still, the beard would have likely been short, as seen in Neve's facial reconstruction. So where did the image of the long, flowing locks come from? Back in ancient times, many artists in Europe depicted the Greek and Roman gods with long hair and beards. So, when Christianity became the official religion of Rome, artists might have borrowed from those older historic artworks to show Jesus with long, silky hair and a beard.
Because they wouldn't have readily accepted what was already known. They wouldn't have readily accepted what was already known.
In 2018, Joan Taylor, a professor of early Christianity and Second Temple Judaism at King's College London, published What Did Jesus Look Like? Archaeological sources, Taylor suggests that Jesus was around 5 feet 5 inches tall, the average height seen in male skeletons from the same time and place. Like others in Judea.
I also said this too, that this is the height that Jesus most likely was. He wasn't a tall man. He wasn't a tall man. And the Hebrews are historically known to be men of not great stature, like 7 feet or something like that, but pretty tall, good looking men.
Like others in Judea and Egypt, where Jesus briefly lived, the historical Jesus likely had dark hair, tan skin, and brown eyes.
No, watch how they do this. Like others in Judea and Egypt. The historical Jesus likely had dark hair, tan skin, brown skin, black skin, we call black, and brown eyes. All right.
I think what you would recognize Jesus as being is just really someone who looked very poor, explains Taylor. All in all, most modern researchers agree that he would have looked like a 1st century Jewish man. After all, the letter to the Hebrews declares, it is clear that our Lord was descended from Judah.
So if he descended from Judah, and they're saying that he was we're going to roll a brown man, then what are we saying? What are we saying about Judah? Judah was brown. Is my skin black as when you go outside at night? Or is my skin brown that bronzes in the sun? They know this. We gotta get out that foolishness, and we gotta get out that foolishness of fear. We gotta get out of the foolishness of fear. We know certain things and we don't want to speak them because of fear, and that's foolish. The word tells us that perfect love casts out all fear. Perfect love casts out all fear. Because I love Christ rather if he is white or black. That's the truth of the matter. That's the truth of the matter for me. I'm thankful to be delivered from the lifestyle that I was living, especially in light of knowing that was wrong. Now, one thing, I'm living a lifestyle, I'm ignorant, but that's like, a white person helping me out with some knowledge in real estate. Thank you. You helped me get ahead. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. You didn't have to do that. But that's just me. That's just me.
All in all, most modern researchers agree.
Okay, we got that. Let me see. Now somebody else did one. This artist, and he created this photorealistic depiction of Jesus. And I would say that Jesus would have looked more like this person than where'd it go? This right here. Yeah, I would say it would be closer to this than the other one, obviously. I ain't saying that this is what Jesus looked like, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying.
Interestingly enough, historical texts from the era of Jesus report that Egyptians could not visually identify Jewish people.
This is why I told you that they're gonna tell you one thing and then they finna switch it up completely. This is where having other knowledge, wisdom, and understanding comes into play. They say all that to come to this and say interestingly enough, historical texts from the era of Jesus report. So the Egyptians were saying this themselves, and we know it. The Egyptians said they could not visually identify Jewish people. If the Egyptians were saying it, there was Egyptians in that area. And if the Egyptians were saying it about the Jewish people, that according to the skin complexion, skin color, in comparison to the Egyptians, they could not identify who the Jew people were, then what does that tell you? Just like the Apostle Paul, a Hebrew of Hebrews, mistaken for what? Egyptian. This is how they try to throw people off right here. They say all that, then they come to this and say, yeah, but, for those who want to continue reading, it's interesting, the historical text, according to the Egyptians, they say they couldn't visually identify the Jewish people, in comparison to the other Egyptians. And we know what the Egyptians look like, but we really can't say.
Interestingly enough, historical texts from the era of Jesus report that Egyptians could not visually identify Jewish people. That strongly hints that most Jewish men, including Jesus, did not look that drastically different from Egyptians and men of the Levant during that time.
Say what? Oh, Genevieve, you better stop it. Genevieve, you dirty racist, you better stop it. Oh, my bad, you're a historian, you're just studying history, and hopefully you're studying history the right way. Genevieve just told you that most Jew men, including Jesus, did not look that drastically, because the modern day European Jesus, the depiction of who Jesus is and the so-called people over there, you know what I'm saying? But the true Jesus did not look that drastically different from Egyptians, which is what the Bible tells us, and men of the Levant during that time. Very, very, very interesting. But we're causing division and all these different things.
Some experts also say that Jesus was likely not a particularly handsome man.
The Bible says.
The Bible points out the fair looks of figures like David and Moses. From that, Taylor concludes that had Jesus been handsome, the gospel writers would have noted his looks in a similar fashion. Taylor writes that Jesus did, however, likely sport a lean, muscular look thanks to his work as a carpenter and all of the walking he did. Jesus was a man who was physical in terms of the labor that he came from, Taylor tells Live Science. He shouldn't be presented as someone who was living a soft life, and sometimes that's the kind of image we get.
Exactly, that's the problem. That's the main problem. That you have this Hollywood Jesus, this soft, sissy ass Jesus. I don't know him. Don't know him. Don't want no part of him. That's not the Jesus that got me saved. That's not the Messiah that got me saved. That saved me.
Someone who was living a soft life, and sometimes that's the kind of image we get. We will probably never know exactly what Jesus looked like. But modern reconstructions based on forensic anthropology, archaeology, and historical texts likely come much closer than any artistic interpretations.
Boom. According to what they're saying, we will probably never know, but we will know. The word says we shall see him as he is. We shall see him as he is. We're piecing it together, bit by bit, line upon line, precept upon precept. That just doesn't apply to the scriptures. That applies to life. You get a little piece of life here, a little piece of life there, a little piece of life here, a little piece of life there, and you learn. Then when you get older, you're supposed to have a better understanding of life. I told y'all God working patterns, didn't I? Let me make sure I say this. I don't know everything about this topic. I don't know everything about this subject. Even with the scriptures, I'm still studying it myself. What I learn, I share. What I learn, I share. And then I grow. And then we grow together. That's the way it's supposed to be. Am I enlightened to some other things? Of course. Of course. But it's so I can bring forth the revelation to the people. But it's already in you. The truth is already in you. You just have to have somebody to cultivate, to plant the seeds and to water, so that the truth can come forth. But if nobody's telling you nothing, then how are you gonna know? How can they believe if the preacher isn't sent? Right? But before I get to the other article, which is kind of like pretty much saying the same thing, they're gonna say a few things differently. I want to go ahead and get these scriptures.
Isaiah 53. Who hath believed our report? And to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of a dry ground. He hath no form, nor comeliness, and when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him.
For those who say it doesn't speak about the appearance of Christ, it's specifically telling you that he had no form when he was going to come, when he did come, that he was going to have no form or comeliness. And when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. Desire him to be what? To be king. Because most of the kings of Israel, they were good-looking men. And so they didn't want no ugly person ruling over them. For people that think that the Bible doesn't talk about beauty and ugly, you want to talk about all the beautiful things, all the beautiful scriptures. And when it does say beauty, when it talked about Abraham's wife, that she was so beautiful that he was like, hey, say you my sister. Say you my sister. And she came to the city and everybody was Google Gaga over her. She was so bad. I should say she was so good. But y'all know what I'm saying. That the Pharaoh wanted her. The Pharaoh wanted her. The Bible speaks about this stuff. People are just so superficial and so just weak. You can't say, yeah, she ugly, he ugly. That baby ugly. That's not the right thing to say. No, that baby ugly. It's simple as that. Y'all play stupid how you want to. But you know when that baby is an ugly baby. You say it to yourself. You ain't gonna say it out loud probably. Because most of y'all probably ain't got the balls to say it. I wouldn't say it. But don't push me. Don't push me to say it. Right?
He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows, and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not.
Not only because of who he was as part of prophecy, but because he wasn't a good-looking person. How quick are men, let's just be real, how quick are men to run and go help the beautiful woman in comparison to Big Shirley? In the words of Kevin saying, Big Shirley. God not resting his soul. Yeah, you heard what I said. How quick are men to run and help the beautiful woman? Or look at the beautiful woman first before he looks at the average woman or the woman that's busted. And even with the women. Women and what want. You got to be tall, you got to be dark, you got to be handsome, you got to have perfect teeth. His teeth better be white. His hair better be on point. If he ain't got no hair, his beard better be on point. He better make a certain amount of money, this and that. He better be all these things, or I don't want nothing to do with him. He better not be ugly. What the first thing you ask your homegirl when she got a homeboy or somebody she gonna hook you up with? What do you say? Let's just be real. You already said it. What he look like? Is he cute? Is he handsome? What he look like? Yeah, he's straight. Then you see him and girl, you ugly. You tricked me. I thought it don't matter though. Stop lying to yourself. What do he drive? What he work at? But people don't want to have these conversations. Y'all sitting there probably laughing at because you said this yourself. You probably just said it not too long ago. Let's just be real. But going back to verse 2, for he shall grow up before him as a tender plant and as a root out of a dry ground. And you can connect that with the scriptures of the parable of the four grounds and stuff like that. He hath no form nor comeliness, and when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. Now you can look these words up, form and comeliness. It's pretty much saying the same thing. There's not going to be any physical. There was no physical beauty when Christ first came that would make the people really believe that he was the Messiah. They were expecting this dashing, beautiful king, like King David or King Solomon, to come in and save the day. They were not expecting this 5'5" man that wasn't even attractive physically. And Christ purposely did that. He purposely did that because he knew if he would have came as, the baddest thing since we say is crack cocaine, then it was a wrap. He wouldn't have been crucified. They were like, don't crucify him. He's too gorgeous. He's too beautiful to crucify. And that wasn't righteous because you're supposed to treat people and judge righteously, no matter if they are beautiful or not. Because the word tells you that beauty is fleeting. You got beautiful women coming on the scene every day. All right, we're going to grab this one and going to get ready to close it out. This one is titled The Ongoing Mystery of Jesus' Face. It was updated March 22nd, 2021. It was originally posted February 20th, 2019.
He is one of the most commonly painted figures in Western art. But what do we really know about his appearance? For centuries, the most common image of Jesus Christ, at least in Western cultures, has been that of a bearded, fair-skinned man with long, wavy, light brown or blonde hair and blue eyes. But the Bible doesn't describe Jesus physically, and all the evidence we do have indicates he probably looked very different from how he has long been portrayed.
Oh no, that's not true.
The Bible offers few clues about Christ's physical appearance. Most of what we know about Jesus comes from the first 4 books of the New Testament, the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. According to the Gospels, Jesus was a Jewish man born in Bethlehem and raised in the town of Nazareth, in Galilee during the 1st century AD. We know Jesus was about 30 years old when he began his ministry, but the Bible tells us virtually nothing about what he looked like, except
30.
that he didn't stand out in any particular way.
So he didn't stand out in any particular way in comparison to most of the people in that region. Just like your average people today walking around, they're not, we say, drop dead gorgeous. A person that looks good is going to stand out.
We know Jesus was about 30 years old when he began his ministry, but the Bible tells us virtually nothing about what he looked like, except that he didn't stand out in any particular way. When Jesus was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane before the crucifixion, Judas Iscariot had to point Jesus out to his soldiers. Among the disciples, presumably because they all appeared similar to one another.
Spaghetti-o.
Watch, Jesus, His Life in History Vault. For many scholars, Revelation 1 verses 14 to 15 offers a clue that Jesus' skin was a darker hue and that his hair was woolly in texture.
For many scholars. They're even using this scripture. But for some crazy reason, when we use it, I don't use it a lot because there are better scriptures to use, in my, spiritual opinion. It's still an issue though. Regardless. They still make it an issue. What is so fearful about the black God? God manifests in the flesh. Isn't he supposed to be fearful regardless if he's the black God or the white God? In the sense of skin complexion?
For many scholars, Revelation 1 verses 14 to 15 offers a clue that Jesus' skin was a darker hue and that his hair was woolly in texture. The hairs of his head, it says, were white as white wool, white as snow. His eyes were like a flame of fire, his feet were like burnished bronze, refined as in a furnace.
Bronze?
We don't know what looked like, but if all of the things that we do know about him are true, he was a Palestinian Jewish man living in Galilee in the 1st century, says Robert Cargill, assistant professor of classics and religious studies at the University of Iowa and editor of Biblical Archaeology Review. So he would have looked like a Palestinian Jewish man of the 1st century. He would have looked like a Jewish Galilean.
So he would look like a black man.
Read more. Who wrote the Bible? Some of the earliest known artistic representations of Jesus date to the mid-3rd century AD. These are the paintings in the ancient catacombs of St. Domitilla in Rome, first discovered some 400 years ago. Reflecting one of the most common images of Jesus at the time, the paintings depict Jesus as the Good Shepherd, a young, short-haired, beardless man with a lamb around his shoulders. Another rare early portrait of Jesus was discovered in 2018 on the walls of a ruined church in southern Israel. Painted in the 6th century AD, it is the earliest known image of Christ found in Israel and portrays him with shorter, curly hair, a depiction that was common to the eastern region of the Byzantine Empire, especially in Egypt and the Syria-Palestine region, but disappeared from later Byzantine art.
Disappeared.
Read more. Does this 1,500, the long-haired, bearded image of Jesus that emerged beginning in the 4th century AD was influenced heavily by representations of Greek and Roman gods, particularly the all-powerful Greek god Zeus.
They presented their Greek god Zeus as white, and that's who they were representing Christ as. This is where they get that from. I don't understand why they're confused about it. Oh, Jesus is Zeus. Their Jesus is their Zeus. We don't worship Jesus. Yeah, that's a good one. We don't worship Jesus. I'll make a movie called Jesus. We don't worship Jesus, which is a combination of their Jesus and Zeus. We don't worship neither one of them. Oh.
At that point, Jesus started to appear in a long robe, seated on a throne, sometimes with a halo surrounding his head. The point of these images was never to show Jesus as a man, but to make theological points about who Jesus was as Christ and Divine Son. Joan Taylor, professor of Christian origins and Second Temple Judaism at King's College London, wrote in the Irish Times, "They have evolved over time to the standard Jesus we recognize. Of course, not all images of Jesus conform to the dominant image of him portrayed in Western art. In fact, many different cultures around the world have depicted him, visually at least, as one of their own. Cultures tend to portray prominent religious figures to look like the dominant racial identity," Cargill explains. Read more. The Bible says Jesus was real. What other proof exists? Of the many possible relics related to Jesus that have surfaced over the centuries, one of the most well-known is the Shroud of Turin, which surfaced in 1354. Believers argued that Jesus was wrapped in the piece of linen after he was crucified, and that the shroud bears the clear image of his face. But many experts have dismissed the shroud as a fake, and the Vatican itself refers to it as an icon rather than a relic. The Shroud of Turin has been debunked on a couple of occasions as a medieval forgery, says Cargill. It's part of a larger phenomenon that has been around since Jesus himself, of attempting to acquire and, if they can't be acquired, to produce objects that are part of Jesus' body, life and ministry, for the purposes of either legitimizing his existence and the claims made about him, or in some cases, harnessing his miraculous powers. In 2001, the retired medical artist Richard Neve led a team of Israeli and British forensic anthropologists and computer programmers in creating a new image of Jesus, based on an Israeli skull dating to the 1st century AD, computer modeling and their knowledge of what Jewish people looked like at the time. Though no one claims it's an exact reconstruction of what Jesus himself actually looked like, scholars consider this image, around 5 feet tall, with darker skin, dark eyes, and shorter.
With what? Darker skin. The other one they said, it's olive. They're talking to the same guy. Talking to the same guy.
In her 2018 book, What Did Jesus Look Like?, Taylor used archaeological remains, historical texts and ancient Egyptian funerary art to conclude that, like most people in Judea and Egypt around the time, Jesus most likely had brown eyes, dark brown to black hair and olive brown skin. He may have
Olive what? Olive brown skin. But they're saying that he didn't have Negroid features. Stop it. That's their argument now.
While Cargill agrees that these more recent images of Jesus, including darker, perhaps clear hair, darker skin and dark eyes, probably come closer to the truth, he stresses that we can never really know exactly what Jesus looked like.
He made sure he stressed that, didn't he? He made sure he stressed that.
What did Jewish Galileans look like 2,000 years ago, he asks. That's the question. They probably didn't have blue eyes and blonde hair.
Oh no, that's racist. You better not. That's just pure racist. You cannot say that they did not have blue eyes and blonde hair. Because if I said it or someone else says it, oh, you're causing division, this and that, blah, blah. Yeah, you're right. We are causing division. Think not that I come to bring peace on earth. I come not to bring peace, but a sword to divide. That's what the truth does. That's why we have on armor. Y'all jumping on us, go jump on this man for saying that. This is the hypocrisy. And I wanted to make sure I expose this hypocrisy, so you can start questioning, why do they really have a problem with it? Why do they really have a problem with us being the people of the flesh? Hopefully you are the people in the spirit also, whether you are Jew or Gentile. But more specifically, why do they have a problem with us being the people? Because if Christ is the people, then we can make even more of an argument of us being the people. More relatable. That's the question. But with that being said, God bless each and every one of you in Jesus Christ's name. As always, stay focused with Jesus. And as you know, the truth is not debated, it is declared. Amen.